So let's discuss how Adam Rutherford, who's one of the people quoted by The Guardian to attack the bogeyman of scientific racism, responded to our written response. Because it is interesting, that a person of his journalistic prominence, an employee of the BBC, would engage in such like tendentious reasoning. Uh, when he dropped the term scientific racism again in his reply to the Poria tweet, I asked him if Darwin was a scientific racist. Our beliefs are basically the beliefs of Charles Darwin, you know, altered to accommodate the evidence that has emerged since his writings.
Yes.
And Darwin, of course, observed racial differences. He said the characteristics, the mental characteristics of different races are very distinct, partly in their intellectual faculties. And he also used some archaic language in comparing different racial groups, which wouldn't be appropriate today, but is understandable given the practices and norms at the time.
Yes.
Um, and Rutherford responded to my question by saying that he had typical views of scientific racism. So that's kind of a denouncement, although he wasn't willing to literally state that Darwin was a scientific racist. I subsequently asked him whether Richard Dawkins is a scientific racist, Dawkins having said things like race is biologically real. And he answered by asking me, what point are you trying to make? This is really pathetic. So basically, you help with this unethical investigation designed to besmirch people and ruin their business, and you drop terms like scientific racism, which are obviously pejorative. Even I mean, race science, one can debate whether that's an appropriate term. It's not obviously pejorative, even if it has some negative connotations. But scientific racism is obviously pejorative.
Yes.
And then he drops this term and then refuses to explain who it doesn't apply to.
Right.
Obviously, this is an incredibly bad faith approach to
I think
debate.
there's an interesting reason for that because the left, well, let's say the educated left, embraces Darwin with a particular fervor because they think it distinguishes them from the uneducated rubes who are creationists, but they're unwilling to follow Darwinism through to its just perfectly reasonable consequences, namely there's human variation, it's patterned, predictable, etc. We could get into that in another conversation. So when you ask the question about Darwin, it's like two sacred values colliding.
Right.
And Dawkins, same thing, because Dawkins, I mean, I think Dawkins is weak on race, but at least he's not willing to endorse the notion that race is a completely factitious creation of racists.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, Although, I think in one of Rutherford's articles, he goes as far as to say that Darwin's works are not beyond his reassessment or something. I can't remember the exact phrase.
Darwin is not indeed beyond reproach.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a couple of articles a few years ago, just basically documenting various invidious things that Darwin wrote. Uh, in order to point out that the cancel culture campaigns that were going on at that time, this is 2020, if applied consistently, would defenestrate some of our greatest historical figures like Darwin.
Right.
And yeah, the opponents of race science, like Adam Rutherford and his comrades, haven't really said haven't really dealt with the Darwin issue.
I
And
think it's precise.
and
Yeah.
the clash of values that you identified as clearly
Yes,
part of it.
because it's precisely because it would be embarrassing at this point for them to jettison Darwin, because that would seem like capitulating to the creationist right, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's funny because some people on the creationist right, I don't follow their output closely, do denounce Darwin, but for some of the same
Yes,
reasons that you would imagine people opposed to race science would be denouncing him. He promoted eugenics,
that's
basically
right.
things he wrote in The Descent of Man, and he believed in racial hierarchies. I'm not sure if he actually did believe in racial hierarchies. I mean, he was a very sophisticated thinker, and I know he used terms like
Yes.
rank. It's unclear exactly how that should be interpreted. I mean, he certainly thought that civilizational abilities of different races were different, but whether he thought that
Yes.
some were sort of metaphysically superior to others is less clear.
Yeah, and I think the thing that you see in general with people who are not willing to deny reality altogether, and I will say I don't think Rutherford is quite willing to deny it altogether in the way that maybe Angela Saini would
Yeah,
be.
he doesn't completely deny it, and said he sort of twists language
Right,
to
that's
accommodate
exactly. Yes.
things that are epistemologically threatening.
Yes, you use quite vague language and you refrain from committing to any particular view so that you can always call somebody else the scientific racist.